Hi, everybody. Dr. Jonah Schenker, leading for deeper learning. Today, we have an opportunity to talk with leadership from our Educator Edge division. That's all things professional learning. Thinking about what this work looks like in non-student facing divisions, thinking about what it means to really create the experiences and the roadmap for adults and teachers to create the conditions for what's most important, which is our students. I'm really, really excited in the context of everything that's happening in our current world to get an opportunity to sit down with these folks, think about how they're doing this work, how they're supporting teachers, how they're supporting the schools. It's deeper learning, and let's go. All right, yeah, so we're gonna get started here. And I'm still laughing because I know we've got microphones, there's hands that need to move. I'm not sure we actually have a script or questions, but we're gonna have an amazing conversation this morning with a leadership team from Educator Edge at Instructional Services. Rocking my vest here. Swag. And branding, you gotta have the branding.
Swag, yes.
Absolutely. So welcome. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to come have a conversation, share with our audience for Leading for Deeper Learning podcast, where we're trying to have conversations and bring relevant conversations to the field. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on at Ulster BOCES. There's a lot going on at the state and in New York. And there's a lot going on in this world. And you all have interesting work. You are educators, you are teachers, you have come from a variety of lived experiences in leadership and in the classroom, and come together with a group of adults who are charged with helping systems, helping leaders, helping teachers make the changes, upskill, transform, get curious and excited about all the things that are important in order to provide for students. Regardless of what we touch and talk about today, it's going to be an awesome conversation. So leading for deeper learning, leadership. Again, going back, you all have brought an amazing lifetime of work to Ulster BOCES. Let's go around real quickly. Julie, we'll start with you. Okay. Who you are, what you're currently doing, how you show up as a leader, and then we'll move around the table and then we'll dive in.
Sure. So hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Julianne Ross-Kleiman. Excited to say doctor. I'm always a lifelong learner. Just recently finished my research on the New York State Computer Science Standards and Digital Fluency Learning Standards. So that is really important in the work that we do here in Educator Edge, helping to support teachers and leaders and students, of course. I've been in education for some years.
That wasn't an issue with sound. That was self-blurred, but we'll go ahead and let you move on. We'll let you move on.
From elementary education, classroom teacher, to administrator as an assistant principal, director, higher education. Been very fortunate to receive a lot of training in a lot of different areas. And I think I bring that skill to Educator Edge, and the fact that I continue to like to learn. I know that sounds so, but I do. I am a lifelong learner. After this conversation, I'm actually going to receive training for as an AI leader through COSIN, and now bring that back as part of our AI circle and work that we're doing in our districts and to help students grow. So that's a little about me.
Awesome. So AI, artificial intelligence, yes. I got that one. COSIN. Tell me about what is that?
Yes. COSIN is an organization, because of course now I'm trying to remember exactly what it stands for, Consortium of School Networking. Yeah, I think I got it. School networks. It is an organization to help grow educators, a PLC, okay. A professional learning community focused on educational technology, similar to other organizations where you are there to have deeper conversations and discussions with like-minded educators come together, but also provide resources for others, resources for ourselves, but also provide resources for others through conferences, webinars, trainings. So whatever we learn, we make sure that we're giving that back out to the community.
Awesome. So a small bookstore at an event over a summer, and here we are, right?
Here we are, literally.
So who are you? And
the existential question. Who am I? I am Yaya Whaley Williams, New York City born, Orange County resident, super excited to have onboarded as of this past October to the Ulster BOCES community. And a little bit about my journey. I started as a teaching fellow of high school math, and then just through the power of mentorship, organically progressed to an AP of a high school, then was a principal of a founding P-Tech, and most formally the director of student equity over in Monticello. And so I come with a range of experiences, all rooted in passion. And the way that we connected, again, during my break in the traditional education world, opened up a bookseum, brand new word, reimagining what it means to be a bookstore, a community center, and ultimately a learning space. And that's how I was connected with this great organization. And so when I think about how I show up as a leader, I try to stay grounded and rooted in humanity and my own experiences as a learner at the developmental age, which we all love, middle school and high school, right? When it's the most awkward and strange. Because if I can stay grounded and rooted in the most vulnerable time as a student, then I think I can stay rooted in how we all stay connected to the student experience. So yeah, I started here at Ulster BOCES. I have a humble bookstore over in Orange County that is an extension of not just my passion, but my belief that education stretches beyond the building walls. And like we say, community is a verb, right? Support is a verb. And when I think about one of the things in the North Star commitments about how do we stay connected to community, that was what really gravitated me towards joining this team.
Awesome. So whether or not we have scripted questions or not, we don't actually have to share that with anybody. We've got so much already to kind of follow up. We've got artificial intelligence and technology as it relates to all of this stuff. We've got community and the relationship work and the humanity work and the extension of classroom you talked about in this bookseum. But we have one more introduction. We've had an interwoven past and journey and have worked together in different ways, lots of ways. But you're here at Ulster BOCES now. Which is awesome. So tell our listeners a little bit about you, your work, and what you're passionate about today, because I know it changes.
It does change, but
it's rooted.
It's rooted. It definitely is, and I think we didn't really prepare a lot, and so I was saying to Jonah before, like, okay, which version of my origin story am I sharing today? And I really PBL kept hitting me as I was thinking about it, as my colleagues were talking. I'm Sarah Dudley Lemick. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning at Educator Edge at Ulster BOCES, and our division is about professional learning mostly. So we're working with the educators, the adults who are working with students mostly. But project-based learning is something that's been important to me for a very long time. In fact, as I was driving into work this morning, I was thinking my senior year in high school in my English class, my thesis was about experiential learning and why that was better than the world that I grew up in, which was all about tests at the end of the chapter, midterms, finals, all of that. So that is something that I've been passionate about for a long time. I actually tried to get away from education and have an undergraduate degree in art history. I was like, no, but my whole family teaches, so they pulled me back in. And throughout my career, I've talked about it as being my calling. So I taught history for a long time and never thought I would leave the classroom. I miss teaching every day. And in fact, it's one of the things I love most about my job now is teaching adults. But I just got a little tired of having kind of a turnover administrators and thus a turnover in initiatives in the school and things that, we kept having to do it new. And there was frustrations with, I didn't grow up in New York State. The construct of the Regents exam was a little foreign to me, but I taught global history, so there was always that test. So as an administrator, my goal was really to stay in one place for a while so that teachers, educators could see an initiative through. But I actually took my job in Little Highland, New York, because they were a block scheduled school. And that would allow me to do projects with my social studies teachers, our social studies students. And it would be, I think, like PBL negative 1.0, right? Like it was the start of project-based learning, but it was much more about a summative type of project. Though I did, because I had the block, I was able to, have things happening. There wasn't a lot of me standing and talking just every once in a while. But then, sadly, we switched from block scheduling about midway in my teaching career, and that frustrated me a lot because, when you can, now what is PBL, the way we talk about it now, the underlying core is about relationships, right? And so in a block schedule, I knew my students by October, they knew each other. We had protocols in place. There was just so many things really good that were happening that was about projects, but it was also about knowing each other, knowing the teacher, me knowing them. So I taught for a while without having that block, and it was more difficult. So when I became an administrator, I was trying to think about ways that teachers can build relationships with their students. I fundamentally believe that is what creates success in a school. Of course, we need to do all of the things to ensure that students can read, ensure that students can use numbers in a way that makes sense. But if you don't have that relationship, I just don't believe it works. People don't learn from people they don't like, right? So, that's really been, so as I went through my career, I really loved my time as an administrator in a school district. COVID happened, that was a little intense, and I just got to the point where I was kind of ready to do something a little different, and there happened to be the opening at Ulster BOCES. Throughout both my teaching as well as my administrative degree, career in a district, I had spent a lot of time at Ulster BOCES. From the very beginning, my district sent me to things at Ulster BOCES. I was very involved in kind of anything that was new or different that was coming along. And as an administrator, I worked very hard to send teams to, again, anything that was new and different. And there was always something new and different coming from Ulster BOCES. Anything that was big in the broader world was also going to show up at Ulster BOCES. So when this opening happened at a time where I was kind of ready to go in a different direction, I was really excited to start this work and very much excited to be working with other educators. Again, I come from a whole family of educators that you really can't look anywhere and not see an educator. So I grew up having these kind of conversations literally at the dining room table. So very excited to be able to go to other districts and talk about the joy of learning and the beauty of our children who are in our schools. I just think that's the part that makes our job fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're not shy on collective experience at this table and smiles and passion. So that's great. Before we get into some of the kind of programming and professional learning that you all are doing to drive forward the vision here at Ulster BOCES, North Star, deeper leading and learning, PBL, crew, all resting on belonging, equity stances as we take a look at them. I want to talk a little bit about BOCES are unique. We are schools, we have schools, but we have divisions that are driven in this kind of business functionality where it's through purchase services. And so, I have, this is my 15th, going to be my 16th year here at Ulster BOCES, and the human and connective tissue between the divisions have had ebbs and flows of positivity and connection, and we've worked really hard to break down some of those barriers. And so what I'd like to kind of get some perspective is when we talk about project work, when we talk about crew or culture, right? Crew is a structure to build culture. Often those conversations in instructional spaces, there's coherence. right? People may need to understand the steps that we're talking about around X, but we've been really trying to talk about this in non-student facing or instructional spaces with support staff, with clerical, maintenance, custodial, et cetera. And so while you all are school people doing school professional learning, you also have many staff who, again, are not student facing. Can you talk a little bit about some of the rituals, routines, what you're trying to build into, again, collectively when you come together, but each of you also work in smaller teams because it's critical that we are living out this work in everything that we do. So you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I was thinking more and more, I feel that we're really not working. Yes. So, for example, we're both supervisors of instructional services. I am specifically model schools and distance learning. Model schools being the division of New York State where you are purchasing software, but it's materials. But it's more about us coming to support you and how to use them and how to use them with your students and the comfort level of how to move students forward. In the distance learning section, also making those collaborations and those connections with students across the state through different like career connection activities or class-to-class connection activities. And Yaya works with our content specialists, like our science, our ELA, our math, but more and more, we're really collaborating instead of departmentalizing it. We've had the conversation that we want to meet collectively with everyone at the same time. We've been, and this is something that we've been continuing from when I was in Educator Edge earlier, left, did some other work in the agency and came back. But working together as peers, co-teaching with one another, learning from one another. If we have a strength in technology and you have the strength with ELA, how do we do a workshop together to build on those strengths? So some of the things that we've been doing in the department to continue the rituals or of the whole agency, we have crew circles every Friday. But even within our small meetings or smaller meetings, we have crew circles. We all have the opportunity to lead a circle. Everyone's given the chance to do that. Along with that, we have really had that discussion about project-based learning being something that we want to be woven into our PD sessions, our professional development sessions, our professional learning sessions, really. We recently went to a district, Katona-Lewisboro, and the three of us presented on block scheduling through project-based learning. So in the time that we had, there was a movie about that where the movie happened in real time. We had a block time and we were teaching, and we started with a launch, and we started with a circle, and we explained that these are the things that we do, and we want to share them with you and show you how you can do this with your students, with yourselves, in your district. So we definitely talk about project-based learning. We definitely talk about Center for Love and Justice and how those stances come together for us, how we support one another, how we speak with one another through all of lifing, right? Because everything is not always wonderful and perfect.
Can I tap in on something? One of our big buzzwords, and shout out to Shauna Brown, because this is her tagline, that joy and learning must coexist, right? So even though a lot of the sub-teams that we work with are not student-facing, how do we keep student experience and student voice as an essential component of what's driving us as we're looking at the data of who's coming to MLP sessions, who's coming to our offerings for professional development.
Right. So you reminded me, actually, so we were talking about AI or artificial intelligence, but we didn't have the classroom experience or the voice of the teacher. So I had a friend who came on with us who's been working with his students in middle school with AI for years. And so he came on a conference call with the model schools innovators, and they asked all kinds of questions. And it made sense because students were there to have the conversation with him, with us, so that we could get the student voice. So we make sure that if it's something we don't understand or we need some support and we need that student voice, we will go out into the world. We will go out into different agencies to get that.
Right. So I want to take one thing that you started to talk about, joy in learning and the coexistence of that. I want to tie that into, I believe you said it was negative 1.0, the evolution of PBL, right? And just stay there for a second. It's not about the project, right? It's about the process. It's about the equity drivers in it. That when we design these experiences for those furthest from opportunity, everybody can access and it benefits everybody. And it's not different for adults than it is for students, right? We just had a conversation where I was listening to an assistant principal in our last podcast talk about, I asked him to recall the experience of when he got to go out to San Diego. As soon as he started talking about it, he started saying, it was snowing. It was January 22. It was snowing here. I got off, palm trees. The wind was blowing from the beach. He talked about the feel of the artwork that he was able to touch. The project cards he could remember. That's because it was an experience that connected to his humanity, to at a relational level. Bookwork, inroads, doesn't drive those innate drivers for learning, right? And creating experiences that we call them like those significant learning experiences, right? That's the language of it. And that doesn't mean, as you pointed out, that like literacy, we don't have to tend to literacy. That's a gatekeeper. That's a human right. Numeracy, again, and there's a body of information that we can't just rely on it's being in here, that we need to know to be able to interact in a complex world. But talk a little bit about, again, what does that look like when you're building learning experiences for adults? And then I want you to kind of talk about, like, from the systems level, because we've talked about this, right? Like, it isn't, yes, we can do a 101 PBL class and people can sign up and do that. And great, there's some moves you can learn, but there's something different that you're working on in terms of an approach. So I just want to go back to you for because joy, right? Like, anybody who knows and been to a professional learning experience that lacks joy or learning,
it's like watching paint dry. Like,
I'm usually doing fake phone calls.
Yes. I could have had a V8, right? And so I mean, what I think about is one of the keynote that you had the first year of Deeper Learning, Chris Emden. He said something that resonates with me to this day and will stay with me, right? If we can't dream, we replicate. And so even when we're thinking about like PBL and what it means to build lessons and to teach quadratic formula, right? Having adult learners tap into the dreamer within them. What could it look like if we took them outside and instead of just drawing a graph on graph paper, we had them do projectile motion of airplanes or throwing balls with one another? How do I leverage the actual interests of adult learners into the experience? And so one thing that we're very intentional about is, as corny as it may seem, finding out the passions of adult learners outside of the classroom, right? So often we have SEL, which is social emotional learning, project-based learning, being restorative, and it's always forward-facing to what the teacher has to do for the student. But how is that the experience for the leader to do for the teachers? Right? So we have to honor that kids sometimes come in the building and they have a rough day, and we have to give them mindful moments to take a minute before we dive into content and build connection. But when the teacher walks in and has a rough day, where's your first period class, right? So how do we also, as an organization, embody what it means to embrace the humanity of folks, help them to tap into the dreamer within them so that they are modeling that in what they do for young people? Because like we all know, energy is not lost or destroyed, it's transferred. That HTH experience was a palpable moment. And so one of the things I fully believe about when I walk into a space, regardless of how my day is going, what am I doing to emote the vibe and the energy that I'm hoping that everyone leaves with?
Right. And before we click over there, dream versus replication. there's I'm not suggesting you're making this assumption, but there's an assumption that that everybody can dream. And I would go as far as to say we've taken these moves, and again, we've leaned on the futures work at Stanford to actually talk about, like, how do you build the competencies to get dream work to happen? Because you can't design for a future that you haven't visited. Some people can take a plane and fly and have an experience, but we also have 500 people. We can't get them on there. So how are we creating experiences? Again, talking about the conditions for dreaming or futuring, so that we can paint those pictures of where we want to go, and then talk about, like, explicit leadership moves, teacher moves, student moves to walk that path to get there. And again, those conditions, the conditions for dreaming, aren't fostered bell to bell in 40-minute segments.
Well, they can be.
They can be, right.
They can be, right? It's about permission.
Right.
And it's about, and I think, to me, that's a lot of, when I spoke about being an administrator, because we have these boxes of schools and there's so many different factors, whether it's the state government, whether it's parents, whether it's expectation, community values that contain our dreams, right? Or that keep them from really being able to fly, or whatever metaphor you want to use, right? So I think, for me, deeper learning is about fostering and allowing people to dream. And I, it's just not the natural place for so many educators, because they're not allowed to do that in their regular school environments for many very important reasons, right? But I think, one of the ththings that we try to do, and I'm sorry I kind of jumped into your...
No, I'm a double dutcher.
Into your joy in learning.
Right. I'm going to share your joy. Now I've probably lost my train of thought in that little segue. I think the vibe that we really try to work on is that joy of being there and honoring the work that our teachers do. And so when we start, not only do we try to build some of our professional learning opportunities along a PBL model, but we're also instituting the crew structures. So, and to truly build a crew, you need repetition. And so we've done that a lot within our department. But I've also been talking a lot about how do we build community from the very start when we're doing our professional learning sessions, right? So sometimes these are people that are only coming together for an hour and a half or 2 hours. They're coming from all different school districts with all different levels of dreams, right? And all different directions that they're being asked to dream, maybe. But starting with a circle, which scares the crap out of a lot of our educators, right? They come into the room and you start talking about getting in a circle, and like, oh my God, right? But I think what we try to do is not make it, we want just to connect. And again, it's about that humanity underneath things. Right. And like, if we can connect as educators to start, it's not about sharing all your secrets. It's not, so sometimes it's silly, sometimes it's a little bit deeper. It depends on what the professional learning thing is, but being able to connect before, as you were saying, before you dig in to whatever it is topic that you're going to talk about is hugely important. And I kind of want to go back to what you were saying about our non-teacher facing people.
Yeah, please.
I think that's something that's really important in building this whole community. We've done a lot of work at Educator Edge, and I think across the entire agency, of connecting, again, our non-student facing folks to the students, to understand that we're an educational institution. So if we're an educational organization or institution, even if there's a business aspect of it, it's still about children and it's still about learning. So whether you are the professional developer who's standing in front of a group of educators, or you're the person who is answering the phones and making sure POs are put in place and connecting with contractors, in the end, this is all about the delivery and the student learning. And we've really doubled down on that a lot in the organization because it just helps stay connected. And if you're going to talk about customer service, our customers are our students.
Right.
Yes, there are districts, but it's our students in Ulster County, across the region, who ultimately are going to benefit from whatever this work is that we're doing.
Yeah, and I think the idea of like project work for non-instructional facing, to me, is really a mindset, right? Not about transactional activities that have to happen in order to do the things that we need to have happen for students. While in an agency, there are things. The project mindset is that just because it's not that done that way doesn't mean there isn't an efficiency, that there isn't a way that we can do it that creates more joy, creates more access. So I want people thinking as designers and work and project work versus rote transactional. I think the last piece that you called out on, which is it does happen in pockets, is so true, right? Like, and I always say that, like, we don't have a teacher problem. We have magnificent teachers, right? Like, structurally we have this container issue. So what I'm talking about really is it is no longer acceptable that it only happens or is able to happen in these two pockets because of the system, because of the lack of knowing. So to me, Educator Edge, leading for deeper learning, is about systems work, right? How are we ensuring that that every leader is creating the conditions, that they have the experience themselves, they're allowed to do the dream work, because we don't often allow leaders to do the dream work. Right?
No, in fact, we let them do it less than teachers most of the time.
Absolutely. So how do we, which is why, right, after all of this deeper learning, our conversations were, this is not going to happen unless we zero in on the leadership changes, dispositions, transformations to actually create these conditions. And thus this work was born for us.
And that's exactly what it is, creating those conditions. And that's where I see is truly happening here. It's creating those conditions so that I'm going to say the word fail. I could try something. I could research something. I could say, can I go see this? Can I? And maybe that's a big failure. And that's okay, because I've learned from that. It's more my process, as you were saying, than my product, because there's learning in every single thing that you do. And then bringing that back. And you're right, everyone can't go out at the same time. But with that, like, train the trainer model and making sure that things are not just a one and done as much as we can. When we do have to do a superintendent conference day or one and done, we try our best to make sure that people know, even though I'm leaving your space right now, I am never leaving you. So that you still have my information, reach out to me. How can I connect with you? How can I support you? How can we do things that continue our relationship throughout the years ahead to help you with students? And everything that I do, I want to make sure that when I'm front-facing adults, I'm modeling what I would want them to do with students. I want to model how this can be done. I want to say, even let me in your room so I can model this or design this with you and continue the work and gently hand it off to you. So yes, we all can't go out at the same time. So we have to do that train the trainer model, but also the fact that if you open that for us to go out and explore and try and fail and give it a try again and do research. Research and development is so important to continue our growth.
Yeah.
We can't just sit still. We have to keep growing.
Yeah. So let's pause there for a second. We'll shift a little bit, talk about research, development, new ideas. You all think about creating professional learning for adults, leadership, teachers, etc. Tell me something that you're currently working on, that you're getting ready to deliver, or something that you're dreaming of to be able to put together a series.
A debut.
Let's peek behind the curtain. What's coming to the
What's
catalog?
on your list for our weekly conversation?
Right, and then I'd love to hear from both of you. I want to hear what you're thinking about, but I also want to hear a little bit about we've got this amazing event that we're working on. I want to take a moment to kind of talk about where folks who are lonely in this innovation work can come to find family and coalition. But let's take a peek behind the curtain. What are you thinking about?
Let me make sure I mention the right things. All right. So one of the things that's coming down the pike, I know AI, and whether you subscribe to or not, it's a reality about what young people are going to have fluency with and know their rights around, and how that world intersects with math, right? Math is very algorithmic, is very routine, but how do we step away from just building mini computers and have strong critical thinkers, right? Because if technology is going to do the computing, we need to cultivate the dreamers, the thinkers, to have new, fresh ideas. So we'll be looking into doing some AI plus math. What does that mean? Also, we have some writing revolution, thinking about not just strong readers being strong writers, but what does it mean to revolutionize the way that we teach the system of writing and communicating through a thinking pen. Let me think what else. On the science front, we have the chemistry and the physics investigations coming out. And the STEM folks, you always know they're the most rigid to move because they're like, I know my content,
She
right?
just called everyone out.
I did,
Wow.
and just for
It's been
everyone watching,
deleted
I'm
from
a
all
math,
I
I'm
would
a,
say
I'm a
that.
math person
That wasn't
at
me.
heart, huh? No, and I say that because they know their content, especially at the secondary level. They are bound, they are content like driven. And how do we help them tap into that you teach students, not content, right? And so that in and of itself for some, especially in the STEM world, is revolutionary. So merging and integrating not just AI with the content areas, but infusing what it means to be a dreamer in a content that is very algorithmic and equations driven, because that almost seems like an oxymoron. Right. I'm dreaming in my quadratics lesson, like it's a formula. You memorize it, right?
I've never dreamt.
I mean, you're probably dreaming about dinner.
I've had nightmares
about
There's,
dinner,
like,
not
nothing
about the
algorithmic
quadratic
about
formula,
anything I've done.
right?
Before I turn over to you, if I was signing up to take a passion course that you were teaching, what am I signing up for? Give me what's
I can't. The one word you would sign up for, whitewater rafting. I've never done it personally, so I don't know if that's appropriate.
To Educator Edge.
Coming soon.
Is it virtual? Because if it's real and you've never done it, I don't know if you're my guy.
Well, listen, but trust me, I will get us through somehow, some way. And I say that because we're crew. All jokes aside, because we're crew. And a lot of what's happening in the world, educationally, with new things, you have to get on the boat, trust who has an oar with you, and the rest you're figuring out along the way. Now, I don't want to say if you sign up for a session, I don't have an agenda and a deck and a presentation and a goal, right? But if you're going to allow humanity to show up in a traditional space, you have to have flexibility and allow for those teachable moments with adult learners too.
All right, I got it. I'm in. I'm signed up.
All right, perfect. You don't need a vest. I promise. You don't need a vest. You don't need a vest.
This is not the vest that's carrying me down the Colorado River. So what's in your world? Any peaks for you?
Yes, we've already launched our asynchronous courses because everyone learns differently. So merging that with, say, New York State Distance Learning Consortium and looking at the way in which everyone reaches out to learn. So we have asynchronous courses that people have signed up for that is part of our learning through Vital Education. Oh, okay, what's that acronym? But it's virtual instructional teaching something. But the idea that everyone can access their learning in different ways. So we have that. We have an AI Day coming up on April 25th. It is a remix of the October one that we had. Sorry.
No, good. I'm in.
See, now I got that cough,
Yeah,
that
back.
scratchy thing went
You're
away.
back.
It took me a minute. Everybody, right? It's going to be over soon. Okay, so we have the remix of that. We're actually partnering with School AI, who is on the consortium list, and EdLaw 2D, because we want to make sure that we are mindful of the tools that we are teaching. Our teachers are the tools that our students can use and keep them safe. So we have a day, but we're extending that day to a cohort. To a circle. We're extending that offering to a circle next year, where throughout the year we will be working with schools. We're looking for teams of schools because we don't want things happening in pockets or isolation. We want you to do that train the trainer model and bring it back. So within our circle, we're going through project-based learning. We're going to start with our launch and end with our celebrations of learning. Throughout the time, we're going to be offering asynchronous courses, virtual courses. We will actually be coming out to you as well. That's about it that I can think of in regards.
I think that's It's highlights. Yep.
Let's go for now. I mean, we have some other things that behind the
We
scenes.
don't want to give everything away.
Right,
No,
exactly.
we
That's
don't.
the next one.
It's only episode 6 here.
I did want to say, though, when I think about like something that's underscoring both of our teams' work, everyone knows the saying, like, it's not what you taught, it's what was learned, right? So it's not only the support we think we're providing, it's what the recipients are receiving as support, because help is only help if it's perceived as help. So just really underscoring a lot of our sessions with some innovative presentation style, because if I could have watched the deck at home and just read the slides, why am I coming to experience it with you? And so that is kind of the beating drum of what we're trying to cultivate in a learning environment. What would make it different than if I just did this at home by myself?
I mean, no different for an adult or student, right?
Absolutely.
So as we begin to kind of wind down here, this philosophy, our North Star, deeper leading and learning, the infusion of it as a model, not a standalone. And I think what I know what will become a signature event for leaders, our second annual Leading for Deeper Learning conference, a global conference that we're hosting in Kingston here, and your team really driving that experience. Talk to us a little bit about what that's all about.
So when I think about Leading for Deeper Learning, this conference, it's a 2-day conference. What makes it different than going to any other leadership conference that's happening anywhere else in the country? Because there are lots of them, right? It really is about being able to dig in. The way that this conference is structured, the first day of the conference, you're signing up, instead of signing up for 7 different 45 to 90-minute sessions on little tidbits of information, you're signing up for what we call, thanks to our friends also at High Tech High, a deep dive. And so you're committing to about 4 hours of deep work, structured again on a PBL model. So we're having our leaders come and experience a PBL-esque type of thing in a 1-day session, all around topics that are important to leadership right now. So we're not going in completely different directions. We're talking about AI integration in schools. We're talking about literacy for students K-12. We're looking at MTSS and SEL, all of these things that are out there in our education world, whether you live in New York State or you live anywhere else in the country. But again, the process, the ability to collaborate with other leaders and dig deeply into how can we make this happen in our schools? How can we allow ourselves to dream? I think that really is the overarching theme of the day of how do we help leaders dream and then bring their dreams to more of reality. So the day 1 is a deep dive. We have a keynote speaker, very excited to have Dr. Young Zhao come and talk about his version of innovation in education. Phenomenal, funny. We're hoping he's going to sit with Jonah as well sometime this spring. And then the second day is an opportunity to sign up for Den Talks. And these are different than, again, your traditional workshop where it's a sit and get, where it's an expert on the stage telling somebody how they did something. That the idea of a Den Talk is more of a conversation around these are some things we're doing, but the opportunity to either ask questions or to look at the question, as a whole group of leaders. And then we also, because we want to be embedded in students and remember that students are the reason that we do this work that we do, we also will have a student keynote, actually end note maybe, I guess, to reinforce, again, the reason that we need to do this deeper learning. And I'm sure Jonah's going to segue us there, but specifically in New York State, New York is reimagining and dreaming about what not only the high school experience will be, although it's focused a lot there, but what it means to be a graduate in New York State. And we're looking at a portrait of what a graduate is, but we're also looking at, and what does it mean to graduate? What are the pathways that you can take? And I think this leading for deeper learning is really important because that's not the model that most of us who have, came up through the leadership ranks, right, who were taught to be leaders, that's not the way that we've been taught to think. Much like we were saying earlier, it's not the way teachers were taught to teach. Leaders are going to need a lot of support with this. This is a very different way, in New York at least, of thinking about how students demonstrate their capacity to be humans out in the regular world. And so, we'll be focusing a lot And in fact, we'll probably be offering a third day, kind of an optional day, to really dig into some of the big moves that will be coming from New York State and just think about, how are we going to make those things happen in our schools? And the ability to work with other leaders is super important because, again, it can be very lonely, right? There's not a lot of people to talk to. And if you tend to be kind of innovative, there's even less folks. So the ability to come together and dream together and do great things for kids and be able to really be focused on those students is key.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I've got two more kind of concepts that, again, could be standalone, but I'm going to look for kind of quick reflections on. New York Inspires. It's a picture, it's an image of this new idea of school in New York. It's that big. 4 transformations embedded in that: portrait of a grad, redefining credits and learning experiences, the decoupling of Regents assessments as part of requirement, and lastly, the migration movement to one diploma. All really exciting movements and changes. And as you pointed out, before we talk about the what, we need to be thinking about the human experience that leadership can help build to allow people to do this co-design work, because we're not going to get A, B, C, you should do D, because that's not what this is about. So really quickly, 30 seconds, if you want to weigh in, excitement, ideas, things you're thinking about, and then we'll wrap up with kind of a little bit of advice from you three as leaders to both teachers and systems in our complex world. Anything you're thinking about resonating with you?
Just very quickly, I think what I think about is we're doing it.
Right.
We're I've been fortunate through my role here to be housed in our school-based programs, to be housed in our teacher-facing programs.
Yeah, a lot of perspective.
Yeah, we're doing it. Students with work-based learning challenges, integrating our academics with our professionals who have the knowledge and skill to help move students forward on whatever path they want. And that's also the same feeling you have for us.
Mm-hmm.
What path does Julie want here in the agency? What skills and learning does she need? How can I support her to do that? I feel like we're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm thinking of the power of language to shift beliefs, to inform culture. So going from the pathway, which is what New York State was, to a pathway. It's a single word change that just opens up options for young people. And so often when you're pouring into young people or adult learners, you're trying to not insert toxic positivity, but you want them to really believe what you're saying. But if that's not my lived experience, it just becomes words. And I think a lot of what the work we're doing here goes beyond the words to a lived experience. So better than we are probably, I'll use an I statement, better than I'm able to communicate what it is, we invite you to come experience it, because that'll tell you more than anything that I'm able to share pre-coffee today.
That was
My
his
coffee.
voice.
I keep staring at your Dunkin'. I'm like,
It's just water. There's water in there.
okay.
New York Inspires, this work, I know you're excited about lots of it.
I mean, New York Inspires is super exciting to me because I think, to follow the theme that we've been on, I think it allows teachers, educators to dream, right? And that's what the name even says with New York Inspires. It allows them to think beyond this very small box that the Regents exams created. I think actually that was pretty intentional way back when they were put in place 100 and however many, 25 years ago, whatever it was, because it was an elitist mechanism. It was a way to sort people and often exclude many of our students. And so this is going to open that up. It's going to allow all our students to be able to follow those pathways, to be able to think about what they need to go out there in the world and be the amazing people that they start out as in our schools when they're our littles in kindergarten. So that's what it's super exciting to me. I think it really, and I do think that it's going to open up educators to so much.
So we've got this amazing pathway forward through New York Inspires that we have the ability to kind of design the experiences to get there and dream up of what it could look like. And then we've got our reality of the world that we are sitting in today. Your work is supporting educators, leaders on behalf of students. What we are experiencing right now is a direct attack on the work that we are trying to do. Let's call it what it is. To go backwards in the ability for us to create these experiences, build young people up, build adults up, open opportunities, and so again, without having another hour, I want you to just think about like what are you holding up to be able to again in work as leader. We take a lot on and we put things on our shoulders, but caring for is critical in that work, right? We are caretakers. We also have to make sure that we have our coalitions to be able to support each other. We know that to be true. We don't always do such a good job of that as leaders, but we're working on that here. What are you just offering your colleagues, your friends, your family, the educators that you work with to be able to move through this noise, which is loud, and hold on to the most important, which is we're going to keep doing this work. How are you keeping that lit so that you can be caretakers for others? And a word, a sentence, some advice for the educators that you hold in your care.
You took it, actually. It has to be, you have to find your affinity group. You have to find your colleagues. You cannot isolate. You cannot isolate at this time. That's.
Thank you.
Yeah, finding community, and I would say holding space. There's a lot of work all the time, and sometimes you need to just call a meeting with no agenda to say, how are you doing? One of the things that I do, I'm working on what to call it, but everyone knows about love languages, but professional love languages. What does it look like to show you compassion or acknowledgement in the workplace? How would you receive it? And so holding space and also finding community.
Thank you.
I'm struggling. I'll say, like, this is really difficult because it does feel like it's, as you said, an attack on everything that, again, I've been working for my entire career and maybe even beyond that. But I'm also a big history nerd. And so while the direction right now doesn't feel very good from a history standpoint, when you step back and you look at it in much broader terms, we know that history never actually goes back permanently, right? So I'm taking comfort in this is a natural reaction to the progress that we've been making over centuries, really, but even just in the very short term. I think it's also, we're in a revolution, meaning technology, right? This is a revolution. It could be an extension of the Industrial Revolution, maybe, but I think it's a whole new age. And anytime you have a revolution, there's always conflict and there's always reaction. So I'm trying to take that much bigger view. I would prefer not to be living through it. I'd be preferring that it's, I'm hoping that this is a short bump and not too many people are injured in that process. It's hard to be hopeful about that in the moment. But I think, looking at it long term, as we look at our littles who are in our schools right now, in 12 years and 18 years, we hope that going through this point right now, it'll be better for them by the time they're in high school, So, but it's like, I'm very honestly, it is difficult, and I think as leaders, because people are looking to you or to us, it's not always easy.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you all for having a conversation together this morning. I do think this is a moment where we will all ask ourselves who we want to be in this moment. I'm fortunate because I have confidence in the agency with you three at the table that we're standing among folks who have decided that that there's nothing that's going to stop this work. Doesn't mean there won't be bumps and bruises and harm but we're in the right place at the right time. I'm thankful for all of you and how you show up and appreciate the conversation. I know we didn't even have a question jotted down, but yeah, we made some,
we
we
found
made
it.
Whitewater rafting.
little whitewater,
Come
little
on.
dream.
Come on.
And that's it. We're ready to go.
Ready to go.
Shoreline. Shoreline.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
get you some
you.
coffee. Have a beautiful morning.
See you
I
July
wanna do a
15th
quick-
and 16th.
I do want to do just a quick shout out to all of the leaders and educators who are doing this right now. A big thank you to them as well. I try to do that anytime. I mean, you're doing really hard work, and our students need you and appreciate you, whether they demonstrate that in ways you can see or not. So thank you for that.
That is
All
the
right.
truth. Thank you.
Thanks.